Engineers today can design skyscrapers that sway in hurricanes, bridges that span miles of open water, and tunnels beneath oceans. We've got computer simulations, advanced materials, laser-guided precision tools. And yet, scattered across the planet are structures built thousands of years ago that make modern engineers scratch their heads and say, wait, how? These aren't just impressive for their time, they're impressive, period. Some involve moving stones that would challenge our biggest cranes. Others demonstrate mathematical precision we'd need computers to achieve. A few seem to violate what we thought we knew about the technological capabilities of ancient civilizations. What did these builders know that we've forgotten? Number 1. The Great Pyramid of Giza's perfect alignment. The Great Pyramid isn't just big. It's freakishly accurate. The base is level to within 2.1 centimeters across 230 meters. That's a tolerance of 0.00009. Better than most modern construction. The sides align to true north with an error of just 3.4 arc minutes, roughly 1/15 of a degree. To put that in perspective, achieving that level of precision today would require sophisticated surveying equipment and GPS. The ancient Egyptians supposedly did it around 2560 BCE with copper tools and rope. The pyramid contains an estimated 2.3 million limestone blocks, most weighing 2.5 tons, some weighing 80 tons. They were quarried, transported, and placed with such exactness that you can't slide a credit card between many of the joints. The mortar is so precisely calibrated that it's actually stronger than the limestone blocks themselves. Modern engineers can explain some techniques, the ramps, the levers, the massive workforce, but when you actually try to replicate the precision with period-appropriate tools, the math starts getting uncomfortable. Some calculations suggest they'd need to place one block every 2.5 minutes, working 10-hour days for 20 years straight. No mistakes, no delays, just relentless, perfect execution. Number 2. Puma Punku's impossible stonework. Puma Punku in Bolivia features some of the most precisely cut stone blocks ever found, and they were carved from andesite and diorite, some of the hardest stones on Earth. The blocks have perfectly flat surfaces, sharp 90-degree angles, and complex interlocking shapes that look like they came from a CNC machine. Some stones have drill holes that are perfectly circular and evenly spaced. Others feature 8-shaped grooves cut with tolerances measured in fractions of a millimeter. The Tiwanaku people who built this around 536 CE supposedly worked with stone hammers and chisels. Andesite ranks between 6 and 7 on the Mohs hardness scale. Bronze, which hadn't even reached this region yet, ranks around 3. Copper, which they did have, is even softer. You can't effectively carve andesite with copper. Pounding it with stone hammers would take forever and wouldn't produce these laser-straight edges and mirror-smooth surfaces. Modern stonemasons using diamond-tipped tools say replicating these cuts would be challenging today. The blocks also weigh up to 130 tons and were somehow transported from quarries 6 miles away across terrain that includes a lake. No one's figured out a convincing explanation for how any of this happened. The site looks less like ancient construction and more like someone left industrial equipment running and then vanished. Number 3. Baalbek's impossible megaliths. The Roman temple complex at Baalbek in Lebanon sits on a foundation that predates the Romans by who knows how long. That foundation includes 3 limestone blocks called the triliths, each weighing approximately 800 tons. Not 800 pounds, 800 tons, each one. They're roughly 64 feet long, 14 feet high, and 12 feet deep, fitted together so precisely you can barely see the seams. A 4th block, the stone of the pregnant woman, still sits in the quarry 3/4 of a mile away, weighing an estimated 1,000 tons. For comparison, the heaviest stones in the Great Pyramid weigh about 80 tons. Modern cranes can lift around 20,000 tons, sure, but they require massive support structures, carefully prepared ground, and teams of engineers calculating load distribution. The ancient builders somehow quarried these monsters, transported them uphill, and placed them 20 feet above ground level in a foundation wall. Roman historians credited earlier civilizations, but provided no details about the methods. Some engineers have proposed systems involving thousands of workers, massive wooden rollers, and decades of effort per stone. The math technically works, barely, but it requires assuming a level of organizational capacity and resource dedication that seems insane for what's essentially a foundation that most people would never see. Why go to such absurd lengths? What were they trying to prove or preserve? Number 4. Göbekli Tepe's prehistoric complexity. Göbekli Tepe in Turkey shouldn't exist. It was built around 9,600 BCE, before agriculture, before pottery, before metal tools, before supposedly civilization itself. It features massive T-shaped limestone pillars, some weighing 20 tons, arranged in circular enclosures and covered with sophisticated carvings of animals. This wasn't a settlement, no evidence of habitation. It appears to be a ceremonial site, which means hunter-gatherers somehow organized themselves to quarry, transport, and erect these pillars, then carve detailed reliefs into them, all while supposedly living in small nomadic groups. The site predates Stonehenge by 6,000 years, and the pyramids by 7,000 years. Think about that timeline. This is as far back before the pyramids as the pyramids are before iPhones. The pillars show evidence of advanced stonemasonry techniques, precise angles, and artistic skill that shouldn't appear for millennia. Ground-penetrating radar suggests there are at least 20 additional circles still buried, meaning what's been excavated is maybe 5% of the site. Whoever built this had knowledge, organization, and motivation that completely rewrites our understanding of prehistoric human capability. The traditional narrative says civilization arose because agriculture allowed people to settle down and specialize. Göbekli Tepe suggests maybe it happened backward. Maybe people organized into complex societies first, then figured out agriculture to support their ambitions. Number 5. The Antikythera mechanism's ancient computer. In 1901, divers found a corroded lump of bronze in a shipwreck off the Greek island of Antikythera. Decades later, X-rays revealed it was a mechanical computer built around 100 BCE, with dozens of interlocking gears designed to predict astronomical positions and eclipses. The device could track the sun, moon, and planets through the zodiac, predict solar and lunar eclipses, and even account for the moon's elliptical orbit using a pin-and-slot mechanism that represents the earliest known use of such engineering. The gear teeth are precisely cut, some just a millimeter wide. The differential gearing, where one gear's rotation is determined by the difference between two others, wasn't seen again until 16th century clocks. Recent reconstructions required advanced machining tools to replicate. The ancient Greeks made this with hand files and basic lathes. The craftsmanship implies a whole tradition of similar devices that's been completely lost. No comparable artifact appears in the historical record for over 1,000 years. It's like finding a smartphone in a medieval castle. We know it exists, we can sort of figure out what it did, but the knowledge required to create it seems wildly out of place for its era. What else did they build that didn't survive? What other technologies were lost? Number 6. Nan Madol's Coral City. Nan Madol, off the coast of Pohnpei in Micronesia, is a collection of nearly 100 artificial islands built from massive basalt columns stacked like logs. The columns, which form naturally in a hexagonal shape from volcanic activity, weigh up to 50 tons each. Thousands of them were somehow transported from quarries on the opposite side of the island, then arranged to create walls, buildings, and islands in a shallow lagoon. Construction likely began around 1200 CE and continued for centuries. The builders had no pulleys, no wheels, no metal tools, no draft animals. Local legends say the stones flew through the air by magic, which, okay, probably not, but the alternative explanations aren't much more satisfying. Some researchers suggest the stones were floated on rafts at high tide, then maneuvered into place. That doesn't explain how they lifted multi-ton columns vertically to create walls 25 feet high. Others propose elaborate systems of levers and ramps built from palm logs. Possible, but incredibly labor-intensive for a small island population. The precision of the construction is unsettling too. The columns interlock naturally because of their hexagonal shape, creating structures that have survived centuries of tropical storms and earthquakes. Modern attempts to move and stack similar stones using traditional methods have mostly failed. The whole city covers 170 acres of lagoon, representing millions of man-hours of work. Why here? Why this method? Why go to such extreme effort to build on water rather than land? Number 7. The Longyu Caves underground mystery. In 1992, A farmer in Longyu, China, decided to pump water out of a local pond. What he found underneath was one of 24 massive artificial caves, hand-carved from solid siltstone. The caves are enormous, some with ceilings 30 feet high and floor space exceeding 20,000 square feet. The walls, ceilings, and pillars are covered with evenly spaced chisel marks angled at consistent 60-degree patterns, creating a decorative ribbed effect across every surface. Someone excavated an estimated 1 million cubic meters of rock. There's no historical record of this project. None. No mention in local archives, no legends, no contemporary accounts. The caves appear to date from around 212 BCE, but nobody knows who built them or why. The precision is disturbing. The chisel marks are uniform across thousands of square meters. The pillars supporting the roofs are evenly distributed and identically carved. The whole complex shows evidence of careful planning and sophisticated engineering to prevent collapse. Removing that much rock would require thousands of workers over years, probably decades. Where did the excavated material go? 1 million cubic meters of rock should form a mountain, but there's no debris pile anywhere nearby. Why is there no record? Projects this massive don't just vanish from history. Entire civilizations leave smaller footprints. The caves were clearly important, clearly expensive, clearly difficult, and then everyone involved apparently forgot to write it down. Number 8. Sacsayhuaman's Jigsaw Walls. The fortress walls of Sacsayhuaman outside Cusco, Peru, look like a giant decided to play with irregularly shaped puzzle pieces the size of cars. Some stones weigh over 200 tons. They're fitted together with such precision that the joints are nearly invisible, and you can't fit a piece of paper between blocks. Each stone has a unique, complex shape with multiple angles and curves. They lock together in 3 dimensions, creating walls that have survived major earthquakes that destroyed Spanish colonial buildings nearby. The Inca built this in the 15th century, supposedly without iron tools, without wheels, without written language, to preserve engineering knowledge. Spanish chroniclers who saw the construction said the Inca used a plant extract that softened stone, which sounds like fantasy, except nobody's come up with a better explanation that fits the evidence. Modern stonemasons have tried to replicate one section using period-appropriate tools. After years of work, they achieved roughly 1/10 the precision with significantly smaller stones. The complexity isn't just impressive, it's excessive. You could build a perfectly functional wall with rectangular blocks. Why create these bizarre interlocking shapes? The standard answer is earthquake resistance. And yeah, that works, but it also requires shaping each stone individually to fit its specific location. No 2 stones are identical. Every single one is custom. That's not just engineering, that's obsession. Number 9, the unfinished obelisk's scale problem. In an Aswan quarry in Egypt lies an obelisk that was never finished. It's still attached to the bedrock, but if it had been completed, it would have stood 137 feet tall and weighed approximately 1,200 tons. That's more than twice the weight of any obelisk that was actually erected. The largest standing obelisk, the Lateran obelisk in Rome, weighs about 455 tons, and moving it from Egypt required special ships and hundreds of workers. The unfinished obelisk is nearly 3 times heavier. How are they planning to move it? Ancient Egyptians successfully transported massive obelisks by floating them on barges and using sledges on land. But this one exceeds those methods by an absurd margin. The quarrying technique is visible in the stone. Workers pounded the granite with dolerite balls, harder stones used like hammers, creating a trench around the obelisk's shape. You can still see the tool marks. What you can't see is a plausible plan for what comes next. The project was abandoned when cracks appeared in the granite, but it raises questions about every other massive stone the Egyptians did successfully move. If they were confident enough to start carving a 1,200-ton monument, they must have moved similar weights before. Where are those? What techniques did they use? Why don't we have clearer evidence of the methods? Number 10, when we forgot how to build. These structures share a common thread. They represent capabilities that appear, flourish briefly, then vanish. The precision stonework at Pumapunku doesn't show up in later Tiwanaku construction. The astronomical sophistication of the Antikythera mechanism disappears for centuries. The massive stone-moving techniques used at Baalbek and Sacsayhuaman seem to die with their builders. It's not that technology steadily progresses. Sometimes it jumps forward, then resets. Sometimes knowledge gets lost, not because it was secret, but because the specific combination of skills, organization, and cultural priority that made it possible stops existing. Modern engineers can build skyscrapers and space stations, but we can't perfectly explain or easily replicate what ancient builders accomplished with supposedly primitive tools. Maybe that says something uncomfortable about our assumptions. Maybe sophistication isn't just about having advanced tools. Maybe it's about having the patience, obsession, and cultural focus to push simple tools to their absolute limit. These ancient engineers weren't working with magic or lost technology. They were working with stone, copper, rope, and human labor. They just cared enough, knew enough, and organized well enough to make the impossible look easy. What bothers engineers about these structures isn't that they exist, it's that they barely exist. Most are unique. They represent peaks of capability that weren't maintained or built upon. They're anomalies. And anomalies in the historical record make us question what else we're missing. How many other advanced techniques were lost? How many ambitious projects crumbled to dust before we could find them? The archaeological record is absurdly incomplete. We're looking at maybe 1% of what was built, and most of that 1% is stone, the one material durable enough to last millennia. Everything made from wood, rope, fabric, or leather is gone. All the clever machines, the ingenious tools, the accumulated wisdom of master builders vanished. What remains are these massive stone mysteries that whisper about capabilities we can barely reconstruct. They remind us that human ingenuity isn't a straight line from primitive to advanced. It's a messy, chaotic process where knowledge gets discovered, forgotten, and rediscovered across centuries. These structures stand as monuments to what's possible when intelligence, resources, and sheer bloody-minded determination align. They also stand as warnings. Build something too unique, rely too much on specialized knowledge, and when circumstances change, it all disappears. Thank you for watching and sticking till the end. We've got plenty more videos coming in the future. Hit that subscribe button so you don't miss them. See you in the next one.